Our last and final piece that we're going to cover out of Chapter 1 before we jump back to the rest of Chapter 8 and test prior to the end of the term is getting into rationalizing, or in other words, dividing square root expressions. What we mean by rationalizing is to multiply by the quote-unquote special one when there is a radical in the denominator. So what we want to do is we want to use a couple of different steps. But first we also want to talk about what a quotient property is. The quotient property simply states that if you have a square root of a fraction, you're going to square root the numerator, square root the denominator. Just like if you're squaring or taking a fraction to a power, you do the same thing to both numerator and denominator. That being said, let's take a look at A. A, we have the square root of 144 over 25. This is the same thing as saying the square root of 144 over the square root of 25. Square root of 144 is 12, square root of 25 is 5. Now, in the second one, we've got square root of 500 over the square root of 5. This same thing goes the other direction. If we square root both numerator and denominator, we can write that as one thing of 500 over 5. Well, 500 divided by 5 is 100, so it would be the square root of 100, which we know is 10. Now we get into something where we got 1 over the square root of 3. We can't put it into one big radical, so this is where our steps come in. Our first step is going to be to rationalize that denominator. What we mean is if there's a monomial, such as our case in C in the denominator, our special one is just that radical over itself. So we have here that we're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. Remember, this is kind of like getting equivalent fractions. We're not changing the value. We're just multiplying by something different to make it look different. Now, once we've done that, then we're going to multiply the denominators, which in our case with the monomial, inside stuff times inside stuff. So here we've got square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which is the square root of 9. And our same thing on our numerator, 1 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 3. And then finally, that last step is going to be to clean up that expression, seeing if you can cancel anything. In our case, the square root of 9 is 3. So we have a square root of 3 over 3, which we cannot do anything with. So we're going to just leave it as such. Now, in example D, we've got a binomial in the denominator. That means if there's a binomial, the special one is the conjugate of the denominator over itself. In our case, the conjugate is going to be 1 minus the square root of 3, because remember, it's just like with complex numbers where it was a plus bi, a minus bi. It's a plus the square root of b, a minus the square root of b. So we are going to multiply our expression here, top and bottom, by 1 minus the square root of 3. Then, when we talk about multiplying the denominator, because we have a binomial, we will have to FOIL that denominator. So let's start with our numerator. And in our numerator, we're going to have to distribute this 2 in, giving me 2 minus 2 times the square root of 3. Now in the denominator, if we have 1, and then we take the outside terms and we have minus the square root of 3, and then the inside terms we have plus the square root of 3, and then our last terms we have minus the square root of 9. Cleaning this up, we have here that our middle terms, minus the square root of 3 plus the square root of 3, those cancel. And so we have 2 minus 2 square root of 3. And on the bottom we have 1 minus the square root of 9, which is 3. Cleaning that up a little bit, I see that I can factor out a 2, which means I have 2 times 1 minus the square root of 3, which we could have left unfoiled up top if we had wanted to. And 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Remember, 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. And I'm going to move that negative into the numerator. So it's the negative of 1 minus the square root of 3. You could also write this, if you would like, as negative 1 plus the square root of 3 if you don't like having the parentheses in there. Now, I know some of you will take a little bit to get used to ones like example D, but that's what our purpose of our practice is for. What you need to do now is go ahead and complete these 4 U-Try problems. Bring your questions with you to class tomorrow. Do not forget to fill out your Google form, and don't forget to write your summary.